today is February 1st. And unfortunately, there has been an attack on Black History Month and a questioning of its importance. So, if you will give me a moment to explain why Black History Month is important to me, you might understand. Now, when I got into comics, it was at a low point in my life. I was about 10 years disabled from a work accident. I was about a couple years after losing my mom, and I really had not a lot of family structure around me to give me a lot of support. Well, where I did find support was when I walked into a local comic book store on a whim. And the people there were just so great and instantly accepting. And despite the fact they were all different than me, they welcomed me in. And I saw they had this bond of comic books. And as I was sitting there getting to know these people, I looked around at all these comic books and realized that comics are a whole universe of possibilities. Everything from action to adventure, romance, black exploitation, comedy. It's all there. And I bought my first comic book, which was a couple of Black Dynamites. I think it was Black Dynamite 3 and 4. And I found I really enjoyed that, and I started getting into more and more stuff. But it started with that something that I was familiar with from the Black Dynamite movie that I connected with. And as I started getting into comics, I started to find more and more people, more and more characters that, had a similar background to me. And not just talking about racial backgrounds. The first comic book that made me cry was I was reading Get Joker, the series which was about Gordon, or was it Kill Joker? I think it was Kill Joker. But it was the series that featured Gordon, Commissioner Gordon, who was hired to kill the Joker. And in one of the flashback scenes, they cut to when Batgirl was freshly injured by the Joker and adjusting to life in a wheelchair. And a lot of times in media, we see that these characters are sympathy bait, or in a more crude but more well-known vernacular, sympathy porn. And what that means is they are no more than tools to evoke sympathy, and it's, all treated the same way. We're not allowed to be powerful or self-sufficient, and we're not allowed to show certain vulnerabilities. But there was a scene, and I remember seeing it, of her just trying to get a bowl of cereal. And she fumbled the bowl in the milk, and Gordon was trying to comfort her and let her know it was okay, but she flipped out. Like her world was crashing. And something you don't understand is that when you're disabled and you lose the ability to do what you could, your world does crash. Your world does fall apart around you. And losing that little bit of freedom is a major deal. And it's something I've tried to explain to my able-bodied friends, but I can't because they didn't live it. But when I saw that panel and that real emotion, I felt like I wasn't alone, that the person that wrote that understood what I was going through. And so I have a young nephew, actually 2 young nephews who are Black and Latino. And some of the first books I got my youngest were the Miles Morales Spider-Man books. And it's not because I think that he can aspire to be a web-slinging superhero. That's foolishness. But it was a character that came from a place of familiarity with my nephew, being Afro-Latino, that I can't understand. I'm only Pan-African American. And so, he got to see Miles Morales as a character who shared a certain bond with him, and was written from a place of, understanding. And I go back to my younger days when I was watching wrestling. People would think I'm crazy, but when Hulk Hogan was on the screen, I didn't care. I didn't care about Jake the Snake. I didn't care about Andre the Giant. But whenever I'd hear that, but then, I knew the Harlem Heat, Booker T and Stevie Ray were coming out. And no matter where they were on the show, that was my main event. Because they looked like me. They looked like my father, my cousins, my uncles. And they weren't just side characters. When I was coming up, there were black people in media, but we were either criminals, side characters, or stereotypes to be mocked and laughed at and derided. And fortunately, I came up in a time in the 80s where there were guys breaking through. Guys like Carl Weathers and Eddie Murphy was, innovating action comedy. And later we had Michael Jai White and so many, black role models that came up, Wesley Snipes, that we could look up to. But the field was sparse in the early 80s. And so, but when I saw that representation on TV, when I saw Action Jackson, I was like, you know what? Maybe I can be a badass detective. When I saw Axel Foley in Beverly Hills Cop, I'm like, you know what? I don't have to be super tough to get things done. I can be smart, witty, and funny and still get the job done. And, especially in a place like where I'm at in Wyoming, there is an ugly truth about growing up where I did. As beautiful as my state is, I love Wyoming. I got my Wyoming shirt on right now. I got my Wyoming flag hanging up next to my comic wall. But the ugly truth is, around here, because of the lack of diversity, there is a lot of underlying racism that is accepted. Things like unspoken segregation. I have friends at school that I weren't allowed to be friends with outside of school because their parents thought it was morally wrong for them to be around me. And when I went out for football, I was told I could play, but I was also told I couldn't play certain positions like quarterback because I just wasn't intelligent enough. There was this, prevailing sentiment around here of white superiority, and anything that I saw that was the opposite of that was a big deal for me. And it shaped me to be the man I am today. And even local guys, I'm a musician. And my biggest influences are a couple of guys that you never heard of, Ray and Grady Jackson, local musicians. And they inspired me to pick up a guitar and a bass and, get into music. But it was because I saw those positive role models let me know I could be more than. And so that's why Black history is important. It's not anti-white. It's not about Black superiority. It's about showing kids all we can be and that we aren't defined by our past and that there are reasons why things are the way they are. There are reasons why systematic racism is accepted. There is reason why that there is generational poverty, because when we did build up communities, they were destroyed and raided and bombed, and riots broke out, and they took Black wealth. People don't know that a large part of Central Park was, land owned by Black folks that was bulldozed over and taken. And when you realize that, well, we didn't get the same fair shake that everybody else did, that lets us know that we're just as capable of achieving those things. And so, I encourage you, if you are a Black person watching this, get to know your history. Check out some great comics. There are a lot of great comics that feature Black voices, positive Black images. And if you are a non-Black person, look outside of what you see every day and seek opportunities to learn about Black history so you can understand your neighbor better and you can understand where we're coming from and you can break down a lot of the prejudices that you may have or you may understand why we do certain things that we do and why there is this division. People are pushing things like, saying that Black History Month is to divide when that's not the case at all. It's to educate and it's to break down barriers of fear. Because one thing I learned is that fear, that anger and that disunity comes from a place of fear. It comes from a place of not knowing. And the more that you learn about something, the less scary it is. And so kill all the noise. Seek out some, good stuff, to get out of your comfort zone. And some books that I would suggest is one of my favorites, I Am Batman, featuring Jace Fox as Batman. This was a Black History Month edition with the red, yellow, and green. It's on my wall. It's him and Lucius. This is a great issue. This is number 6. And this was when Lucius found out that Jace Fox was also under the mantle of Batman, and it was a reconciliation for them. It was a great series, but there's also books like Black Panther. There are multiple Black Panthers going on. Ultimate Black Panther is a great series. It's out right now. Blade, another great Marvel series. Night Thrasher, that series was amazing. In DC, we got all kinds. We got Green Lantern. We got Steelworks. That was a great book. And then as far as independence, there is a book that Image put out last month called Motherfucking Monsters, which is described as Evil Dead with a black nerd protagonist. And it is a fun look at the Evil Dead story, but from that perspective, with a lot of humor that speaks to real Black experiences. So that was a fun book for me to get into. If we're going back to Image/Top Cow, there's a great book they put out called Genius, which features a young Black woman who organizes her neighborhood into a militia to protect it from from a corrupt police system. And that is a good book as well. There's so many books. I could go on and on and on. Dynamite Comics, in the 2010s, they put out a few different runs of Shaft that were great. Shaft Imitation of Life is very good. It's true to the Shaft branding, but also tackles a lot of progressive issues. And if you guys want more books that feature Black, brown protagonists, let me know in the let me know, and I will, I'll probably put together a list and maybe make another video on that later this month, being that we do have a whole month. But you guys take it easy. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Until then, remember, the Black lives do matter, and that the more we know, the less we fear. I'll see you next time. Keep reading them books.